Prometeo is the largest open banking platform in Latin America. Founded in 2018, it's an integral player in the Latin American fintech market, which has boomed from worth less than $50 million in 2016 to over $2.1 billion in 2022. Prometeo effectively identifies opportunities for clients by helping them automate and turbocharge their internal procedures through open banking connections. Now, it does this by using a variety of application programming interfaces, commonly referred to by their acronym API, which allow two or more computer programs to communicate with each other. Now, this provides a single access point to banking information, transactions, and payments to multiple financial institutions in the region. And thanks to Prometeo, its clients can now make credit analysis, validate bank accounts, make account-to-account payments, connect electronic wallets to different banks, consolidate bank accounts, and pay other services. It's got 45 staff based at its corporate headquarters in Montevideo, the capital of Uruguay. Now, we're fortunate enough to have the CEO and co-founder, Ximena Aleman, with us here today. And Ximena has graciously going to expand and explore upon the exciting prospects that are in store for Prometeo and the context of its operations. Very, very good to meet you, Ximena.
Nice to meet you as well, Richard.
Okay, so very, very interesting proposition your company has. And given the context of the adoption of financial services on the continent of Latin America, what would you say are the pertinent challenges in the region which are associated with the development of banking infrastructure to begin with? What would you identify as the chief challenges?
Well, I think that Latin America is having a great momentum in terms of digital transformation and I would say digital infrastructure for the financial services. Financial inclusion has been always an issue in Latin America. I think that over the last 3 or 4 years, there's been a great development of financial inclusion across Latin America. And more than, we've doubled the population that has access to a bank account, for instance. We had 3 years ago, it was 40% of the people that could access a bank account. And now we are reaching 80% of the population, which is a huge increase. So I think that the fintech wave that we have witnessed over the last 5 years has had an impact. So what we are doing right now, I think, is trying to understand how that can develop further. Okay, once you provide a bank account, what else can you provide to the population? And to provide more sophisticated, more complex services, you need a more complex and sophisticated infrastructure. Okay, and so I think that what we are witnessing right now is the next step, financial institutions wondering, what can we do next? Now that we have all this population inside our market, we can reach them. What can we provide to them? And I think that what has happened is that they've reached a point in which they have faced the limits of the infrastructure that they used to have. Okay, with infrastructure that we used to have, we can provide a certain amount of services, and that certain amount of services, of course, that it's not enough for the amount of people that it's using right now our rails. And what's next? So I think that what's next is this digital transformation. And for digital transformation, API adoption is key. So I think that right now, what we are trying to do is pushing API adoption across Latin America because we think it's the next frontier. And
No. Sorry to interject. No, I see. I wanted to ask about the relationship between open banking and API. It's almost like a cart and a horse situation. In order to have or for your clients and prospective clients to benefit from open banking, API needs to be watertight. between institutions, financial services institutions. What do you feel has been the progress to date in growing open banking as a species of the financial services industry? What sort of developments have arisen to date that you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, I think that the adoption of open banking in Latin America is booming, and it's been impressive over the last 4 or 5 years. When we started banking in 2018, we were pioneers at open banking adoption in Latin America. Little has been done there. In 2018, Mexico promoted the first open banking law in Latin America, attached to its fintech law. And that was the first step for open banking in Latin America. Over 2019, 2020, I would say that there were little steps, and then peaks happened. Brazil adopted open banking, and the schedule of adoption, it was so fast, so swift, so efficient that 2 years later, we could see the huge impact that adoption had. And I think that somehow Brazil turned into a lighthouse for the rest of the region. So right now we have open banking agendas and open banking regulations in place in Colombia, in Chile, of course, in Brazil. I know that Peru and Uruguay have open banking, have had open banking labor groups, and that are actually watching into that regulation and trying to understand how they can address that step. And I think that the whole region is become somehow open banking oriented, and I think that that's a lot.
That's interesting, because I mean, from the point of view of interoperability, when you make or if we draw the analogy with different software programs and packages, do the constituent nations within Latin America, are they able to speak to one another through their various sovereign open banking platforms, or does that itself raise an issue in terms of integration?
That raises an issue. Of course, that raises an issue. Different to what has happened in Europe, where you have a unified sort of standard for open banking. In Latin America, you have a lot of fragmentation between each of the markets, and each regulator is promoting its own flavor of open banking. So we won't have, I would say, an open banking unified market, but that's actually our goal at open banking, at Prometeo. That's our vision of open banking for the region. What we're trying to do is standardizing those different frameworks and providing a single point of access to the region through a single API.
Because otherwise it's akin to a Tower of Babel, where effectively the different institutions are all speaking their own language. And that's where obviously in many different industries, misunderstandings can arise, and systems, basically fail and break down, and that there is no dialogue between the different constituent parts of the continent and its financial services players. Do you think, in terms of regulation, standard setting, a taxonomy, for want of a better phrase, for open banking, do you think a private company like Prometeo can be the standard bearer or the ambassador around whom other companies in the industry can rally in order to adopt a mutually agreed set of standards for regulation? Could you be sort of an agent for regulation?
So I think it's difficult to become an agent to regulation in terms of being the standard that regulators can promote.
Sure.
But somehow you can become that de facto,
Yeah.
So we work very closely with regulators to try to showcase the impact of open banking, to try to promote our vision, to try to evangelize what we have seen that has happened in other countries, and which are the best practices, how we have designed our standards, and of course our cybersecurity methods, and our infrastructure, which I think that it's something that for regulators, it's really, really key. And that's something that we always try to promote. Then I think that as pioneers, we have dynamized this industry in Latin America, and many financial institutions across the region and many financial companies have heard of open banking because we sat with them early on, and introduced them to this quite counterintuitive concept, back in 2018. And I think that somehow that has created, a dynamic of openness, where we have had a central role. But then I think that it's a continuous work, it's something that we have been pushing, we will keep pushing, with this idea, of becoming a central agent for open banking in Latin America.
Understood. Now, I found it fascinating when I was reading the company's mission statement. There's an excerpt. Forgive me for reading it verbatim, but it is. I think it speaks to the character, the rather original character of the company, and I'll quote word for word. Is it Prometeo, we are not Ivy League. We are not former Twitter or Google. We do not work at McKinsey or Goldman Sachs. We did not make it in NYC. We do not speak fancy English, and we are not elite. We were born with little pedigree and a lot of talent. What we have lacked in networking, we have overcome with genius. Now, it seems to me by the cast of that excerpt from your mission statement that you're styling yourself almost like the David to the Goliath of larger financial institutions around the world. Do you think that would be a fair comment? Are you the underdog?
Yes, exactly. And I would say that that's the label, that somehow we have appropriated for ourselves, Early on, it was hard to bet on Prometheus, or to Prometeo, because of all of that, we didn't have the fancy pedigree, we didn't have the fancy credentials, and I have improved a lot my English. Back in the days, it wasn't that good,
Your English is fine, believe me.
And so, of course, that I always. I'm convinced that being an entrepreneur and building your own startup, it's a growth process for yourself, and for the team. And so it's been a process of growing our talent and our abilities to overcome difficulties that might arise, not having those credentials, and presenting into a table where somehow you are sort of uninvited, and you come with this crazy idea, this crazy idea of modernizing the financial infrastructure in LATAM through openness and interoperability. So right now we are riding the wave, and it is almost peaking, open banking. It's something that in any fintech forum you will be mentioned, or API adoption. 5 years ago, it wasn't like that. And I think that we appreciate, we pride ourselves because it took a lot of courage and an enormous effort to climb this mountain, and to be here today.
And I'm assuming also, given the fact that you do style yourself, in that mold, that people who run SMEs in the region can identify with Prometeo, because it's not as if it's a large monolithic institution coming from Europe or North America and imposing a certain framework of its own, as the Americans would call a cookie cutter approach to the region's financial services. You are from the region. You've been nurtured and grown in the region, and therefore you have a much more empathetic connection with businesses and with the individuals that compose businesses in South America. As a standard bearer within the industry for digitalization and business process automation, how do you think Prometeo is lifting, elevating other industries? Do you think that within financial services, because obviously the distribution, the safeguarding, the spread of finance throughout any industry is imperative to its success. Do you think Prometeo can actually act as a standard bearer for digitalization and business process automation throughout the region? And if so, how is the company going about that? How are you being looked to for leadership in digitalization, especially?
Totally. I think that's something that, because we started early on, something that we have been able to do is to understand customer needs and iterate over that. So through the years, what we have understood is that open banking is a tech trend, and that's with what happens with any tech trend. You can drive it and target different customer segments and satisfy different needs using that tech. What we have done with Prometeo is trying to provide financial infrastructure for financial customers. And all our tech is pointed to serve the needs of the customers that our banking partners are satisfying, okay? So we reach end users through our banking partners. And that's been our strategy through the last two or 3 years. Basically, what we have found is that interoperability was a headache for financial institutions as well, and it had become a headache for their customers because financial institutions hadn't solved that headache within themselves. And what we have found are 4 needs, which are the ones that we are trying to solve. The first one is bank account pre-validation. Okay, so basically what we try to provide is account pre-validation across the region. That means that we prevent our customers for mistakenly sending the money to a different bank account or a bank account that is not operative. And by doing that, we are avoiding the headache of trying to receive the money back, the costs, operative and monetary costs of the rejection of the money. The second use case that we provide is bank account aggregation, okay? And that's like providing our customers a single point of access to their balances and movements across different financial institutions in different countries of Latin America.
Now, from a purely B2B perspective, where Prometeo's proposition relates to account-to-account payments, what are the main benefits? If I'm let's say an SME, a small manufacturer, and I'd like my account-to-account payments through Prometeo. How do I benefit by receiving payments through A to A? What are the essential differentials in account-to-account payments for a business?
Well, I think that there are many differences that make account-to-account payments a key player in alternative payments methods in Latin America. The first one, I would say that is that we are using the banking rails that are already in place in each country, okay? Right now, we are providing the service in Uruguay, in Peru. We're ready to launch it in Colombia, Ecuador, and Mexico in the next year. So what we are trying to solve there is the experience of paying through your bank account. Mm-hmm. And in Latin America, this is a very friction process. and it's not automated. So basically what we provide is to the merchants is the possibility to receive banking transfers as a payment method through their digital channels. Okay. That means that when someone is making a purchase, they can pay through the bank without having to leave that channel, that digital channel, like with the previous infrastructure, if you don't have access to an account-to-account provider, you will have to send your customer to their bank account and they will launch the transfer through that bank account, okay? But that's very friction, and it has low conversion. This way you can improve a lot the conversion. And what happens here? And the key benefit is, of course, that you will have an increase in the conversion, but at the same time, you will have, as a merchant, access to that money right away.
Okay. Yeah, so there's no delay, there's no redundancy in the process, and also, as you say, there are time savings. And is the time saving more appealing to businesses than the cost saving, or are they? Is there an equivalence in this benefit?
I think that it's equivalent in meaning that we provide both. The time savings is key for most SMEs in Latin America, and I would say that it's key for digital adoption of payment methods in Latin America in the near future, because credit card infrastructure has a lot of reach in Latin America. The reach that it doesn't have is because merchants don't want to adopt it. And they don't want to adopt it because it has problems. One of the problems is the time that it takes them to receive the money into their bank accounts. Using our account-to-account infrastructure, merchants receive the money right away.
How long would it typically take, without an A2A facility? How long would a transfer take from one business to another? Would it be a matter of 2 to 3 business days, or?
When merchants are using credit card infrastructure, it takes them between 2 and 15 days.
And 15 days, wow.
Yes.
So if you're a cash business, effectively, and you're relying upon cash flow on an intraday basis, then that could be paralyzing for you.
Yes, exactly. And this is one of the big issues that SMEs have when it comes to digital payments adoption. And then the second thing is the fees that credit cards charge. The fees can vary from 3% to 6%. Mm-hmm. And that is for most SMEs in Latin America feel it like they have a new business partner. So someone taking a big portion of the business, and that's also an issue for adoption, digital payments adoption in Latin America. So with our infrastructure, what we are trying to do is to solve those two issues, okay? Providing a digital rail of payment that has lower fees and that goes directly from the end user bank account to the merchant bank account. So there's no processing of the money in between.
Now, how do you, Ximena, how do you assuage, or satisfy the issue of security? Now, obviously, a lot of institutions and corporations, they given how vulnerable digital networks are to attack by ransomware, by various bad actors in the digital realm. If prospective clients of yours say, can you reassure us about the security of your company to company, your B2B protocols? How do you respond to that rather that quite legitimate concern?
Yes, of course that it's a legitimate concern, and for Prometeo has been always something key, like trying to provide the cybersecurity assessment and assurance that financial institutions need in order to adopt open banking. That being said, for account validation, for account aggregation, or account payments, it's always key to provide the cybersecurity assurance. So there are many things that we have done over the years, to tackle this issue. Of course, that we have the most capable, and experienced team in cybersecurity, trying to always provide best practices to our infrastructure. But then from the very first days of open banking, we design our architecture with PCI DSS standards, And so though in open banking you don't have PCI DSS, we always try to match that standard and that the framework that this PCI provides in order to have like best practices for our financial customers, and that is something that we have done over the years. Then, of course, that we have in each country where we operate, we always provide best practices in terms of data protection. Okay, so also something key to provide the assessment for financial institutions. So something that Prometeo has always done is that we do not keep data and we do not share data. Okay, in any of the use cases and in any of the solutions that we provide, we do not store credentials. This has been an unusual approach in open banking in the region. Okay, this is something that differentiates us from other solutions in the market, but that has always been key for our banking customers.
But you don't anonymize the data; you just don't store it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. We are just you can think of Prometeo as a bridge. We connect two parts. We connect those two parts in real time. Because our connectivity is so stable and it's so solid, we do not need to store information and that it's not that it's outdated. So each time that Prometeo is providing information in real time. Okay, and this is something very key for our infrastructure.
How do you think your, for want of a better expression, competitors or competitive sets, companies like Albo, Finabro, Spare CS, etc. How do you think they view Prometeo in terms of when their C-suite is negotiating, or sorry, compiling, let's say 2023-24 strategy, and they have Prometeo firmly in their crosshairs? What do you think they think to themselves about where can we strike this company? Where do you think your competitors feel you are the strongest in terms of your particular industry in Latin America?
I think that's something that we really like about the company that we have built is that I hope that when our competitors do that, they think we can't underestimate these guys, because something that has happened to us over the years is that because we have this very local knowledge, and we have a really firm network with our customers in LATAM, is that we have been able to iterate over our product, and provide to the market new solutions. So we launched in 2018 our bank aggregation solution, and we try to provide coverage across LATAM. And then we realized that payouts was a headache in Latin America for our customers. So we launched payouts. And then we realized that bank account validation was a problem, and we launched bank account validation. And then we realized that account-to-account payments would be a great solution in Latin America, and we launched it. And I think that by now, I can proudly say that we are always one step ahead. So I think that our competitors should be wondering, okay, what are they going to do next? And trying to see how they can somehow surprise us, and not the other way around.
So they need a corporate crystal ball, really, yeah, to try and look into the future. I'm intrigued, obviously, where you're sitting now, and behind you have the Promethean ball of fire, the flame stolen from the gods. Yeah. What was the origin of coming up with a Promethean theme for the company? How did that, was it a holiday in the Greek islands or something, or how did that originate?
No, it was much less glamorous, like than that. It was like me and my co-founders on a late evening. We were just kickstarting Prometeo, and me and my co-founders, we've been working together for a long time before even Prometeo. We started together in 2015. Building a digital wallet, and then we pivoted and built a PFM. And so when we were building this PFM, we realized that interoperability was a headache in Latin America. Interoperability with banks, like we had this feedback from other fintechs and from other financial institutions. And this was something that we had already started to solve for our own products. So at one point, we said, okay, why don't we try to provide this infrastructure that we have been building to other fintechs and to other financial companies that need this interoperability and do not have it. So we started like iterating on this idea. And back then, like the three of us, we had our different jobs, so we used to meet in my place or in one of the houses, one of my co-founders. It was like late night, like from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., 11 p.m. So I'm trying to iterate on ideas, build the Osterwalder canvas, like this very lean, very startup practices. And so we said, okay, we're going to send the first email. We need to have like a name for this. And one of them just came up with, he really liked Greek mythology, and he came up with this idea. He said, okay, Prometheus, and we could really relate with the myth, and we could really relate with this idea of taking the fire, like the fire that it's this new interoperability, this new infrastructure that was in the hands of a few, and now it's out there, for many to have it, to share it, and to build over it. And I think that that's the profound meaning of Prometeo, being able to democratize some sort of technology to enlight a new future, a better future for all.
That makes sense. And of course, just like Greek mythology, it stood the test of time, which
yes.
which I'm sure is appealing for a company. Do you think the recent turbulence in the North American and European banking sectors, I'm talking obviously specifically about Silicon Valley Bank, Signature, Credit Suisse, etc. Has that presented a risk or an opportunity for technology players within financial services like Prometeo? Do you think that makes it easier to have clients gravitate towards your proposition, or more difficult?
No, I think that it makes it easier. It makes it makes it easier because banking, financial institutions are, I think that after 2020, after COVID, tech stopped being something like mandatory, or like a tech that financial institutions had to some sort of tackle, and as something accessory. It became something key to their value proposition. And it became something key to attend customers' needs. And I think that because of that, despite the turbulence, they know that they have to assess the problems that they have in terms of digital channels, in terms of digital adoption. And I think that they also know the possibilities behind those problems, like the value that they can create, the costs that they can save because of having more efficient, more scalable businesses and solutions. So I think that it's no longer something that tech is not. It's not no longer something that you can do or not. It's no longer a decision. It's simply
it's fundamental. It's imperative.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's an imperative.
Where do you, within the context of what's gone on in the last few weeks and months, where has Prometeo adapted its offerings? Have you tweaked products and services? Are you, when you look forward to the coming 12 months, how do you see the company evolving? How do you see your suite of products evolving?
Yes, of course, that as a startup, we are always tweaking our products, and trying to improve them. Something that always worries us, something that always is like in the basis of what we are trying to build is to build coverage across Latin America. So how can we enlarge the coverage that we provide for our different products in Latin America? And this is something key because we want to we define ourselves as a single point of access to the banks in LATAM, and what we try to do is to meet that need, to meet that standard that we have put upon ourselves. So this is something that we are always trying to do. In one of the flows that we automate, bank account pre-validation, we have a very large coverage right now. We have Mexico, we have Brazil, we have Peru, Uruguay. We are developing Ecuador and Colombia, and we will launch them in the next quarters. So I think that we have some sort of fulfill the coverage that we want to provide for that solution. In bank account aggregation, we have a large partnership with one US-based bank that will imply building interoperability in more than 13 countries in Latin America.
Are you able to name that US bank, or would you prefer to be discreet?
I prefer to be discreet, but then perhaps in a year we can meet again, and hopefully I will be able to tell 2 large partnerships that we have already in place, already signed, but not yet disclosed. And then I think that the key for Prometeo over the next year is being able to extend our coverage for account-to-account payments. And I think that the second part, the second half of the year will be focused in building more account-to-account rails in Latin America. That means Mexico, Ecuador, and Colombia.
With such an impressively ambitious plan, how does the team get time to relax and unwind? And what do you have away days? Do you go mountaineering with your colleagues? Or, I mean, how do you keep a team under such pressure? How do you keep them from burning out? I mean, what's the secret to cohesion and motivation as far as Prometeo is concerned?
Yeah. I think that the key is leadership, so how not just us as co-founders, but the leadership team takes care of the team. And this is something that for Prometeo has been always crucial, you know. We built this company, of course, because we had this great ambition of building the new banking infrastructure for Latin America, but at the same time, because we wanted to build a place that felt life-work balance, because that was the life that we wanted for ourselves. And so that's the life that we want to provide for our team. And this is very, very important for us. I think that you can manage to do that. It is possible. But the key is to focus on the people's needs and not always in the company's needs, you know. You can be, of course, that you can be faster, more efficient, more if you push always the team. But sometimes you just have to put the team first before the company needs, you know. And of course that as a co-founder, sometimes that's not the easy decision, you know, and you would want, because you are thinking on about company needs, but in the long term, when you are doing that, you are also putting the company first,
of course.
You know? And I think that that's very key. In Prometeo, we have a great environment and we have a great team. We have a long-lasting team. Many of the people that work with us have been working for us for more than 2-3 years. Some have or even accompanied us through the very first days of Prometeo. And that's something that we really appreciate, you know, and something that is really dear to ourselves, you know, have a long-lasting team. I think that it's in part our Uruguayan idiocracy, you know, that we love long-lasting relationships, and that we think that it's something very, very important. We push growth, but we do not push growth at expenses of the team, and I think that that's the key.
Understood. Well, it's and something very much to be proud of. I'd like to, Ximena, I'd like to thank you very much for such an expansive exploration of what Prometeo has been doing and is planning to do in and throughout Latin America. It's a fascinating subject. I'm sure the challenges are both inspiring and you know, and rather and can be demanding at times. But given the trajectory of growth that Prometeo, you know, has displayed since its inception, I'm sure you're onto bigger and brighter and better things, and I'd look forward to catching up with you again sometime in the not too distant future to see how progress is coming along. But thank you very much for your time, and all the best for the company's future.
Thank you very much, Richard. It was a pleasure for me to be here today.